Welcome back. Thank you for sticking with us here for Live Impact News. The big news over the weekend and into today, the U.S. and Israel joint attacks on Iran, that now spreading across that region there in the Middle East. And we know that right here in Hampton Roads, we have our people directly involved with the USS Gerald R. Ford, confirmed by CENTCOM that they are a part of this Operation Epic Fury with aircraft leaving there. Some of the other big headlines this morning: a fourth U.S. service member has died in action. They were originally injured in those initial strikes by Iran, retaliatory in that measure. That coming out early this morning. We also know that there were multiple fighter jets that were shot down by friendly fire in Kuwait. All of those pilots able to get out safely and taken to hospitals there within that region. The Joint Chief of Staff Chairman not giving too much detail into that, saying that there is an investigation ongoing. But I just played for you the moments in which we heard from Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, and again, the Chief of Staff's chairman there, Dan Kane, General Kane, speaking about this operation. This coming hours after President Trump also put out a new video talking about the mission in of itself, and speaking that this could potentially go at least another 4 weeks. But there's questions about that from those in Congress on both sides of the aisle. What role should they have constitutionally in decisions when it comes to this operation and these attacks? Joining me today to talk about this is a political expert, Dr. Eric Claville, who's joining us. Let me pull him in right now. As always, we appreciate you for bringing your expertise into this. We're going to start first with your initial reaction when you saw over the weekend. It seems like these major operations over the last 2 months or so in this administration have happened on the weekend, a Saturday or Sunday morning. What were your initial reactions and thoughts when you saw the news that we had joined in with Israel in those joint attacks against Iran?
Well, thank you, Eugene. And just like everyone, I was surprised to see it, but not shocked to see it happen. Ever since the president tore up the joint plan agreement in order to allow inspections into Iran, and their promise not to enrich uranium or seek nuclear weapons, in which his first secretaries of defense and state said that it was working. But ever since he tore that up, and last June, when we bombed Iran, you kind of knew that this was going to happen. The question was, when was it going to happen? Now, of course, the American people there is some pause. I'll say that much, as relates to the U.S. going into another war in the Middle East. Not only that, but you also mentioned Congress. Congress has not been briefed on it the way that they should have been briefed. It looks as if the president is now, again, wielding unlimited unilateral power in this administration, creating policy and getting the U.S. Committed and locked into foreign wars or foreign issues that is not being approved by Congress. So the strain on the military here in Hampton Roads and across the board, military families and the like, this becomes problematic, especially in light of cuts by Doge and the strain on nonprofits. And finally, we can't forget the economic impact that this is having. The Persian Gulf, the area in which we receive the most oil exports in the world, that comes out of that area, the Strait of Hormuz, having to reroute those tankers around the Cape of Good Hope, which is around the tip of South Africa on the continent, which takes longer, which of course is more money, which of course is passed on to consumers. So a lot, just from this weekend, these are a lot of issues that have come to light that we're going to have to deal with that we're simply not ready for.
You bring up some really interesting points there. One thing that I can't help but notice is we're seeing some of the similar conversations taking place that we saw earlier this year, just a few months ago, after the attack and the capture of Nicolas Maduro out of Venezuela, right? We're seeing the same response from our lawmakers to that, but also some of the same rhetoric put forth by Hegseth and the Trump administration when it comes to what the president has the ability to do and to make those decisions. Can you speak a little bit about that, and also kind of the balance here between, again, we're seeing a situation where you have bipartisan support for the idea that the mission is important, right? For Venezuela, it was that, hey, this regime is not good for the people of Venezuela. And then here as well, same sentiments from a lot of Americans when it comes to Iran. Can you speak to that as well, on how this balancing act of constitutional power, but the end all result being something that is also having a lot of support?
Sure. Listen, we live in an ever-changing world. Every society is in a regime or form of government is not complementary to our form of government, a democracy. And of course, in every area, you're going to have conflict, you're going to have unrest, and you're going to have governments that put themselves in a situation or others in a situation to where there's in regions there's a level of unrest and destabilization of a lot of areas. However, we have a process in this country. It's a process of checks and balances. There are many ways in order to help bring stability to areas. There are many ways that we have at our disposal to assist other countries. Military intervention should always be the very last. We have diplomacy. We have soft power, providing resources. We had agencies that provided that, but of course, this administration eliminated that one of those agencies from the very beginning of the administration. So when we take a look at of course, Venezuela and now Iran, those leaders, of course, are in a position to where it's not congruent with policies of America. However, again, as opposed to military intervention and creating a vacuum where now you have a worse faction that can take power and create a worse situation because the discussion of no end game that has been raised, and of course, is what Senator Kaine out of Virginia and others, Representative Massey, Republican out of Kentucky, Senator Graham Paul, Republican out of Kentucky, have brought up, and many others. This is a situation now where, once again, we destabilized a major country in the Middle East, and now there's no telling what will happen in neighboring countries. As a matter of fact, if you take a look at Iran launching missiles at U.S. Allies, you look at what happened in Dubai at the airport. Dubai, is really a conclave of peace. That's where the world comes. That's where the Middle East comes to do business and the like. So you never heard of any war in Dubai, but now you have missiles launched in that area. Not only that, but you also have Kuwait mistakenly shooting down U.S. airplanes. I mean, again, total chaos being created because there was no plan or approval in place. And this is what we're going to have for the foreseeable future until some type of resolution comes about. Not only that, but we also take a look at what happened in Venezuela. You mentioned the president captured the president of Venezuela, brought him to the U.S. to bring up on in trial. But then after that, the people were kind of just left to themselves. The oil companies mentioned that they couldn't really go in or wanted to go in because of the large expense to help rebuild an infrastructure. And now we've left Venezuela or South America, and we turned to the Middle East. Our resources are not unlimited, our military resources. Even though we have the best military in the world, we do have limitations. And with those limitations, we have to be very strategic on where we place those resources so that it can be to the best ability to defend American interests and the American people first. And Eugene, I mentioned earlier, when we look at the campaign promise of this administration, they campaign on no more wars, America first. And there are a lot of supporters of the president, of the MAGA movement, that are a little upset right now because we are now putting American families and American soldiers back in harm's way.
It's so interesting that you mentioned that because I was about to ask you about that. But since you answered that already, can you briefly catch us up to speed on how we got here, right? So we know we've been reporting for several weeks to months now about the rising tensions here between the U.S. and Iran within this circumstance. The president and members of the administration holding negotiations over the last few weeks there in Geneva, trying to reach some form of agreement when it came to their ability to have nuclear weapons. We know we can go back to last summer with this administration with Operation Midnight Hammer, in which, there were attacks that were made there in which they said that they were able to take out the nuclear threat there in Iran. But here we are months later, and the reason for going into it is that from Hegseth that we heard today, they were putting things back together again, right? That potential threat they could have for other people across the country, including here in the U.S. But walk us through even prior to that, because I think what's kind of lost in the conversation, policy changes over the administrations when it comes to this. You can go all the way back with President Obama reaching the nuclear deal with Iran. And then, if I'm not mistaken, within my memory, you have President Trump, who walked out of that deal and really criticized the president about his inability to negotiate, right? That was a big thing that he talked about. Can you kind of clarify and bring us up to speed on how we went from there to here, and even some of the changes we may have heard within the Trump administration itself from his first time in office and even now?
Well, it's interesting you mention that, because keep in mind, and I think people forget these little small things that happened previously in the first administration, and of course, over the course of history. Now, we know that I'll talk about the War Powers Act as well last. But when we look at what happened in the first administration, John Bolton, the former advisor to the President Trump in the first administration, keep in mind, the president had authorized planes to go to Iran and launch strikes inside of Iran. However, the president called it back. People forget that. He called it back during the first administration because just like every advisor to every president we've had, launching strikes on Iran will create a vacuum and unleash and destabilize and unleash potential attacks that will spread us thin. It's one of those countries that you really have to, again, just sit back, really draw out plans and understand if you use military intervention, how is it done, make sure it's effective, and make sure there's a plan to bring in new leadership or sponsor leadership within the country, right? However, you mentioned during the second administration, this summer, 6 months into his presidency, we fly over in the middle of the night, halfway across the world. We drop, tons, multi-ton bombs. The president and the administration says that they have destroyed Iran's plan for making nuclear weapons. And then now, 6 months later, we're being told that they are ramping things up. Well, there is a mismessaging or different messages that persons are hearing, both in Congress and the American people. So therefore, it makes it hard for individuals to understand what to actually believe. However, with this strike, we are in it. And I want the American people to understand there's no turning back. We're in this because Iran has vowed to retaliate, and who knows how that's going to happen. So we're in it for the long haul. However, through the War Powers Act, as it exists now, it gives the president authority for military strikes but they have to advise Congress 48 hours before any strike. Of course, Congress did not receive that. They said they didn't receive that 48 hours as noted by the War Powers Act in 1973, which of course was created because of a veto by Richard Nixon. So now Senator Kaine put up another provision and others supporting it. They didn't get quite that last vote, those last few votes, in order to move it across the finish line during the time of Venezuela. And it's coming back again. He's going to bring it up again this week. So we'll see what the appetite is for representatives and their constituents pushing their representatives to limit the president's powers in order to move forward in future action and in this action in Iran. However, according to the War Powers Act now, Troops can be there for 60 to 90 days, but have to receive approval as far as a declaration of war or more by Congress. And of course, the president said this is war, and only Congress, through the Constitution, can authorize any war.
Which is certainly not the same as what Pete Hegseth indicated today, just in that press conference we heard within the last hour or so, saying that the president essentially knows what is best in this case and has the ability and authority to move forward in these cases. I will say, too, as well, for those who have said that the administration didn't have a plan, again, Hegseth and them pushing back and saying that there has been planning over the last several months and sometimes even before that. But again, those would be questions that we would know if we likely had that through Congress, typically, to your point there. And Virginia Senator Mark Warner, one of the people we've heard from a lot in the last 48 hours with that just in and of itself. We only have a few more minutes here with you, Dr. Claville. Again, political expert, Dr. Eric Claville, speaking with us about the conflict with Iran at this point. Outside of what we're looking at when it comes to the war powers and that vote potentially coming in this week, what else are you keeping a close eye on that you think our viewers should really pay a close attention to in the next coming days?
Well, I think there are several things that we should take a look at. Number one, what will Congress do, the Republican-controlled Congress? What will they do to help to limit the president's influence and his ability to move forward without congressional approval? What limits will they place upon the president and this administration as relates to Iran and what's happening now? Again, the Republicans control both the White House, both houses of Congress, and they also have a majority of the U.S. Supreme Court. So this is a truly one-party rule in power. So if anything is going to happen, Republicans are going to have to step up to the plate and make it happen as it relates to limiting the president's authority. However, if the Republican Party approves of this, then they're going to continue to support the president and this administration. It's their call. So that's where we are on the legislative front. So it'll be good to see what happens there and how their supporters and constituents of their communities, which a lot of those constituents have either they're serving or they have children that are serving or grandchildren serving in the military. And it's going to, and again, we're there, so this is we are committed to this effort, whatever happens either today or months and years down the road. Secondly, we need to take a look at the economics of this. Of course, we mentioned earlier how this is a very important region as it relates to crude oil and shipping. So now, what is the impact on prices? Of course, right now, we're still reeling from high inflation. We're still reeling from the cuts of DOGE in this administration. We're also reeling from the cuts of food assistance through SNAP and also the increased cost of medical care through the cuts by this administration from the Affordable Health Care Act. So at the total of $1.3 trillion total, when you look at food assistance and also look at the cuts to the Affordable Care Act, also known as Obamacare. So American families are strapped with high prices at kitchen table, issues of food and gas and utilities. They're strapped as it relates to healthcare costs, which is going to be spread across the board. So even if you're not on the Affordable Care Act or benefit from it, you do directly, you do benefit from it indirectly because cost of premiums of your healthcare are lower because of that. Because that money is taken away, price is going to increase. And then finally, when we take a look at the increase on American families and dedication and commitment to military families, of course, in light of cuts to veterans, support of veteran affairs, when members come back from serving, what are those services that are going to be available to them? They're going to be limited and they're going to be less than they were prior to this because of the White House policies. So again, this is just not a decision that when you make it is unilateral and it affects one. It is a ripple effect and it affects all of us domestically and internationally as well. Finally, I will say, what will our international partners say? What will the European nations say, especially after the president's lecture to them just a few months ago? So there is a lot that we have on our plate, and we don't want to find ourselves isolated with just America, not just America first, but America only when it comes to these domestic and more specifically international issues because of the policies that this administration is creating without congressional approval. So as a democracy, we're in it together. But in order to be in it together, we also have to make these decisions together as well, which is why Congress is wanting to limit and just bring things to the table to have a proper order of debate, checks and balances, and execution through joint and collective commitment of America's efforts and resources.
Well, we will certainly see what happens this week when it comes to Congress. Again, this is Dr. Eric Claville, political expert, joining us here this morning. We appreciate you. And, a lot of what we're seeing right now here locally within Hampton Roads, our lawmakers, does appear to be down the aisle at that point. You have Congresswoman Jen Kiggans, who's speaking and saying that the actions we saw over the weekend were more so a direct response to escalating global threats that the Iranian regime poses to democracy in the U.S., saying that she supports our troops. And you have those like Warner and Kane and Congressman Bobby Scott speaking to the necessity for, as you're speaking there, talking about a war powers resolution. All right. We appreciate you so much, as always, Dr. Claville, bringing in that perspective. And I'm sure we'll have you back here really soon as this continues to progress.
Thank you, Eugene.